welcome to everyone joining us for another Women in MedTech program. I'm Rachel Robinson, Vice President at MassMEDIC, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you joining us again for another one of these sessions. So I've come to absolutely enjoy the heck out of these programs. I hope you have too, but we've had such wonderful discussions over the last few months, different varieties of perspectives and backgrounds. And I know this one is going to be just as interesting and hopefully really lively. So we do want this to be an interactive discussion. If you'll notice, there is a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to use that, use it liberally. Pop your questions in throughout the program, and then we'll have some dedicated time for Q&A with our speakers at the end of the session to make sure that we get as many questions answered as possible. But as always, these Women in MedTech programs are all about understanding, sharing, communicating, networking, hopefully with one another. So please feel free to make this as interactive as possible. So before we get started, I do have some people that I do need to thank. We could not do this program without our sponsors, and the MedTech and Women in MedTech program does have quite a few wonderful series sponsors, including Zymedica, the Mullings Group, Toxicon, and Metadata. And then we also have some solo sponsors in Freudenberg and Boston Engineering. So I want to say a quick shout out to them and say thank you for the continued support. And we really, like I said, we could not do these programs without you all contributing, not just financially, but your thoughts and your speaker options and some real diversity of opinions. So thank you all so much for that. So in that vein, I wanted to turn things over to Vicki Anastasi. I asked her to come and give a bit of an update on what Veranex has been up to since it's been making a big splash in MedTech lately. So Vicki, I'm going to turn things over to you and I will share your slides.
Thank you, Rachel. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. So it's a pleasure to be here, everyone. I'm Boston-based and been in MedTech for about 30 years in a variety of roles, both industry and then the service space. And really excited, we just launched Veranex and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer. I want to go to the next slide, Rachel, thanks. So Veranex, what we have put together is a concept commercialization continuum of services. And as you can see, we're very excited. Zymedica is part of the Veranex family and is a sponsor of this event. We also have Experian Group, which is a West Coast-based regulatory and clinical, Cartesian, which is data management, EDC, and biostats, and another Boston-based company, Boston Healthcare Associates, which is our market access commercialization. And I hope that the next time I see you all, there will be probably 3 or 4 other lovely logos at the bottom of this. And we're very excited and really excited about our Boston-based community. As you know, we have an office in Providence with Zymedica and then in Boston with Boston Healthcare. And we really believe in the MedTech innovation, from startups through mid-tier through strategics. And our goal is to help get innovative products and life-saving products into the patient and hopefully through the payers as quickly as possible. So wait to hear more. I think it'll come up soon. And I'm really excited to continue to be part of MassMEDIC as we continue to grow and an opportunity to meet with all of you and learn from you. So thank you for the few minutes to introduce Veranex. I'm easily reached if you want to reach out to me about anything, and looking forward to continuing the conversations. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rachel, but thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. We are absolutely thrilled to have you and joining our board. So it'll be really great to be able to interact with you even more over the next several years, I hope. So with that, I think it's a good time to kick over to the meat of our program. And I want to do that first by saying hello to Stacey Pugh and Michelle Fox. I am going to let them introduce themselves because they will do a much better job of it than I will. But we are so thrilled and honored to have both of them. And what I would ask you both to do is maybe just let's take 2 to 3 minutes and give us a little bit of your background, a little bit of the history, and then we'll jump into some questions and comments. So Stacey, why don't you go first?
Yeah, Stacey Pugh. I am new to Massachusetts, all of a couple of months, so happy to be part of MassMEDIC and joining the board there. By background, I'm a nurse. I think there's some common themes on that today. I have spent really the last 20 years of my career, though, in MedTech in various forms or fashions. Recently joined as Chief Commercial Officer for a newly public company called Butterfly Network here in the Boston area, but spent the last decade before that leading both medical affairs and then subsequently leading the business for neurovascular at Medtronic. So a little bit about my background, really excited to be here.
Thanks. Michelle?
Great, thanks, and good morning. So I started my journey in this space originally as a critical care nurse at Beth Israel, right here in the Boston area. After that, I was recruited to Vidacare, which was a startup based in San Antonio, Texas. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of came kicking and screaming in those early days. But the amazing thing about participating in a startup is you really get the opportunity to learn about the entire business. And I had the privilege of reporting to a co-founder. So I was able to learn a lot about decision making right from the beginning in this space. Vidacare was eventually acquired by Teleflex. And I had, at that point in time, built a clinical and medical affairs function at Vidacare. I had a new and much bigger opportunity to do that with Teleflex. So that's been my journey over the last 15 years. And I'm also, of course, based in the Boston area and very excited to be assuming a new position on the board with MassMEDIC as well.
Yeah, we are loading the board with awesome women, in case the audience can't tell. We're very excited about this. So it just kind of struck me in the brief introductions and in it, maybe I'm wrong on this. Stacey, you went from clinical straight to Medtronic, or did you work at a small company before that?
Oh, no, I actually, I came out of the bedside really doing research. I had agreed to help chairman of the Department of Surgery. I was a critical care educator, took on doing a clinical trial with him without being paid because he didn't have any money to pay me, and discovered this whole world of, it was pharmaceutical at that time, pharmaceutical development. Ended up kind of pursuing that through the Health Science Center, spent a number of years starting kind of a bench to bedside research program in the Health Sciences Center, and that was in Texas, Michelle. So we have a San Antonio background in common. Did that on the academic side for a number of years, and through that engagement, running trials, both device and pharmaceutical, ended up making a connection and being lured over to KCI, which is a San Antonio-based company, a number of years ago, and came in on the medical affairs side and ended up running their clinical division for a number of years. Left then to go to a company which was EV3 Covidien at the time, subsequently got acquired by Medtronic, led medical affairs there, built that function out for them over the next 5 years, and then had an opportunity to leave that role and go take on my first commercial role, which, boy, that was talk about having a leap of faith by a leader. Sent me to run a business in EMEA that was about $125 million. So that was my first sales role. I did that in Europe for a while, and then was brought back over to lead the neurovascular business and spent the 5 years there doing that.
So I would love to hear both of your perspectives, because you both had the small medtech perspective as well as large medtech company perspective. I know that's not something we really talked about in prep, but anything you guys would like to share on what you see the main differences and challenges being, obviously working in a small organization with lots of opportunity and startup mentality versus, you know, working for a very large established company?
Michelle, I'll let you jump in.
Okay, great. Because there's a lot to say on that topic. I mean, one of the things that I think is critical for everyone who makes this transition is just remember that the skills you had in that smaller, more focused environment, they're needed more than ever. They really still apply as you begin to understand how to navigate a much larger cross-functional matrix organization that's going to require you to be dynamic, to really consider a broad range of stakeholders in a lot of your decision making. I think that is a critical aspect of working in a more focused area with a team that you probably know, intimately because of the nature of the work day in and day out that you're participating in, to a broader team, which still requires you establish critical connections, which is another reason I think being a nurse is a great start for all this. But so much of that still applies as you work towards, establishing consensus, and a lot of that collaboration and networking remains critical.
Agreed.
Stacey?
I'm kind of on the other, I did smaller company that was in a rapid growth phase, small company that was in a rapid growth phase, hopefully small company that's in a rapid growth phase with my move to Butterfly. So I've kind of been there for substantial growth within each of those environments. And I think, and acquisitions along the way. Certainly, agility and speed is important, I think, in any decision. You have to be willing to stick and move no matter what environment you're in. Learning how to help your organization stick and move in a bigger environment, I think it's a different dynamic. And I was thrilled in the time I took over my first commercial role in Europe at the same time we were being acquired by Medtronic. So it was Covidien to Medtronic acquisition. And going through that process taught me more, I think, about influence than I had learned in my commercial, time to date. And you just had to be really cognizant of culture and trying to understand things. And it made me better externally focused, having to have done that work internally focused. So, I agree with you, Michelle. You have to hone those skill sets and understand that you're building a base of capabilities that is broadly applicable no matter which environment you go to. The funny thing that I would say is, having been in both environments, when you're a small company, you're fighting hard to look and feel and act like a big one. And when you're a big one, you're working really damn hard every day to look and feel and act like you're not. And so, that alone, and how much time we spent talking about how we be the other side of that coin, I think it is an interesting paradigm.
That's a great call out. I mean, that achieving that balance and still being assured you can move things forward, not lose your effectiveness, and accomplish your strategic objectives is critical. And I think that's one of the areas where we really have the opportunity to show up as leaders.
So I want to dive a little bit on that. I know, again, we're kind of diving away from the things I prepped you guys for, but I would love to talk a little bit more about influence, right? And because I think it's an excellent point that you brought up, Stacey. But when you're part of an organization that you are trying very hard to be a leader at and drive forward, and as you said, stick and move in various ways, I think it can be very easy to lose who you are trying to be as a professional at times, right? Your own professional growth will sometimes take a back seat to the organization's growth. So can we talk a little bit about how you've been able to maintain who you are as a professional woman leading, while also making sure that your goals are aligned with the organization's goals, and talk about how you kind of expand that sphere of influence? That's a double-sided question, I know, I'm sorry. So that's two-part, but the first one is really just about maintaining your own professional growth while contributing to the growth of an organization.
Do you want to take that first, Stacey, since I went last time?
I would say first and foremost, I tell people, you get me for what I am, right? I don't have a great poker face. I really, still to this day, and I've had lots of coaching and help with that, but I tend to read a little bit like a book. So I've always just said I'm going to be very genuine to who I am as a leader, and I feel like I've had the capability to do that. I think if there was a lesson that I would want to hand out to younger women out there, you can do that and still be successful. Conformity is not the game of the day. And it took me a little while to figure that out. But I think, you got to show up as you, and you hold genuine to that. I have been very fortunate that I never felt like in managing the challenges of growth, I wasn't managing development for myself. That has presented enormous opportunity for me. And it just kept stretching and pushing and pulling on me. And therefore, I think, it was a constant development exercise every day. I feel like it doesn't matter what level of leadership I've been at, whether I was leading the business, I'm leading commercial in a different company now. Ultimately, I'm developing every day. I learn as much from my people as I think I ever bring to the table, candidly, as a leader. And I learned over time that was my job, was to learn from the people in the room, because they were the people who were going to help me not screw something up. The one thing I do see people doing, and I never want to characterize gender bias, but I'm going to make an observation. I said, you always get me for true to who I am. I do find over time that some of my women leaders or women employees might be less likely to be overt in stating what it was that they wanted. And so I don't know that people's development always gets suppressed because people say, we just don't, we're not going to do that. We don't have time for that. I can usually find a way for somebody who raises their hand and says, hey, Stacey, I want to learn how to do this, or this is where I think I want to go. It doesn't mean like development is you pick them up and you set them in a box somewhere else. There's ways that you can direct and create and orchestrate really meaningful development. It's the raising of the hand that I find a lot of people don't just come out and say what they want, and what it is that they feel like they need or they don't have. And I've always felt like, man, when I raised my hand and said, hey, okay, you think I can lead the business? I think I'm interested in it. Man, things happen, but you had to throw that out there. So there's a lot of ways to get development. Be clear about what development it is you want and why. And I find that if you put that out there and you're still not getting receptiveness, that's your time to ask a different question, probably.
So many good points. I really agree with everything you've just said. Bringing your authentic self to work and recognizing that within doing that, you are bringing diverse thinking, you are creating space for others to do the same, I think is critical, particularly now. And we coming into this, Rachel, you and I had a couple of quick conversations around that. I have always shared with every new manager I've had that I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 4. I've even started with, this might not be the right way to begin this conversation, but I'm going to let you know that. And beyond that, I established in a very professional way that exudes the confidence I have in my own ability, what I'm going to get done for the organization. And I have always encouraged people to not get hung up on a job description in terms of the next level opportunity they want to pursue. To perhaps with the skills they have, they can write a better job description than the one they've been presented with. It's a lot of hard work. It requires commitment, but I think that is the type of person that we want to be, and the person we want on our team, and the person we want to hire. It's somebody who's really going to passionately go after those next opportunities. One of the things that I really enjoyed, and I don't think this is gender specific, is being in the medtech space. There's a lot of innovators. There's a lot of builders. And in my role, and it sounds like in the role you've held previously, but I'm sure is still applicable today, we need to bridge the gap between the practice of medicine, clinical practice, and innovation. And to do that, we have to really show up with all aspects of ourselves, all of the skills that we've honed and developed through the years, the networks that we have. I've had mentors every step of the way. I look for every opportunity to mentor others today, or I have the amazing privilege of working with an incredible multidisciplinary, multifunctional team. And I look for those opportunities for them as well, because to your point, I'm constantly learning from others.
The higher you go, the more important your development plan is.
Absolutely.
I think you realize that very quickly.
Agreed.
So on that concept of building networks and expanding, reach, what are some of the ways you guys have found to be very effective in doing that, right? I mean, there's online opportunities. We've all gone virtual in the last 18 months, which I don't know about anybody else, still kind of sucks. But what can you recommend within your organization, but also outside of your organization? What's been really successful for you?
I'll give a big company answer. Moved to a smaller company, but I will tell you one of the greatest benefits that I had in the seat that I had in Medtronic was I had the opportunity to learn the lessons of my business, and I had the opportunity to learn the lessons of the other businesses that were in different life cycles, had different competitive challenges, different, dynamic regulatory and reimbursement challenges. So it's like I got an observation seat to 19 other incredible people, incredible leaders, but incredible sets of experiences. And I began realizing in that leadership seat very quickly, like I have an opportunity to listen, learn, and then go back into my business and say, hey, where does this exist here? Where does this assumption that we failed to challenge and that we've just walked right through exist? Or where does this regulatory risk exist that we're not acknowledging or thinking through? In a larger company, I think that's one of the things you take advantage of is that you have that infrastructure and the capability to look side to side. I think so many people get focused on looking up in terms of development and management. The learnings for me were like 90% side to side. And I think if you're in a place where you don't have that, seeking peers, and peers can be peers in very different, types of scenarios, who you get to learn from. That forms your board of directors. It forms, those people you pick up the phone and talk to when you need a different perspective. But I think forming that peer group where your goal is to learn their lessons along with them, you have to be obliged and shared valuable information yourself. But man, I'm always looking for where can I learn lessons with somebody else. And I think MassMEDIC is a venue, right? That's part of the reason I'm motivated to be involved here, because we get to see trends, we get to hear and learn and understand as a community things that are coming. I think the fact that you're on the phone means you're doing something about that here. But I would definitely challenge yourself to say, on your stakeholder wheel, do you have peer alignment somewhere that you can walk the journey with somebody and share in their lessons?
I fully agree. I think that was a phenomenal depiction of some of the benefits of the larger organizations, larger companies in this space. And just to complement that, before that was available to me, when I was with a smaller company, a startup, I looked externally a lot. I looked at my medical and professional societies. I looked at Medtech societies. And I also sought out opportunities where I perceived there was a potential opportunity for growth or a gap within the organizational infrastructure. And I just attended those tracks, whether that was a full regulatory compliance or legal domain, recognizing those were necessary parts of the wheelhouse in which the organization I was at needed to grow. I also have long benefited from working side by side with my commercial colleagues and making sure I fully understood their business objectives and looked for opportunities where you could overlay that with the strategic objectives of a clinical and medical affairs organization. I got to know MassMEDIC because I wanted to learn more about corporate social responsibility. I might have been the first CMO to show up and ask if I could come to those meetings. So I think anywhere you can continuously grow, where you can build a network, doesn't just benefit you personally, but it benefits your entire organization. It's a great opportunity to find also new talent for potential recruitment.
Yeah, I want to compliment you both on that, because it seems so obvious, but you just said it in a very clear way. Mentorship is not just top down, or it's peer networking, right? And there's so much that can be learned from those that are in a similar track, but maybe a completely different role, right? Surrounding yourself with people that are maybe on the same age bracket or even just same small career path, but in completely different areas. I think I found one of the things that I've been doing recently, and it wasn't my idea, I can't take credit for it at all, but someone suggested we get together in a small virtual group of 3 or 4 once a week to have virtual coffee and talk through 3 goals. What are your 3 goals? And every week we're going to meet together and we're going to say, okay, these are 2 things or 3 things that you really want to accomplish in the next 6 months. Where are you at? What questions do you have? And these are people from completely different walks of life and very different backgrounds. But it's such an opportunity to share with others and to have others kind of keep you on track with what you want to be doing and asking you and encouraging you and offering suggestions. So I would highly recommend that to anybody on the call as well. But definitely to remember that mentorship is not just getting someone who's seen everything to tell you what they've seen. It's walking the walk with people that are doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
You have to,
you
always have to have that one person, and I know who this person is, and they would know who they were, who says, Stacey, get over yourself, stop. You got to get your head, like, when you start talking about things or you get focused on something, you get too much energy, too much focus. That peer network also affords you the person to tell you to get over yourself.
That person is very important. Yes, I would agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about, there's been a mass exodus of women from the workplace. I mean, obviously, MedTech is not a very diverse place to begin with. I feel like we've made strides in the last 10 to 15 years, and it's been more of a priority at obviously large corporations. And now, especially with smaller corporations and companies that are getting started, it seems to be a very big priority. But I mean, honestly, the last 18 months have done a number on the MedTech workforce, but very much women in that workforce. So what can we do? What are some of the things that you've seen being done? And where are some of the really big issues that you think are going to come from all of this?
Michelle, I'll let you take that one first.
So obviously this has been a big focus of ours as most companies grapple this, because it is difficult. It's difficult personally, professionally to see what's transpired, because I know how hard fought every opportunity is and every advancement we make in this space. I think it's critical that as leaders, we show up in a very supportive and authentic way. We have to have conversations around where their challenges are and what can we do to help them stay, to help them continue to advance, to help them continue to feel recognized and rewarded. And it's not a one size fits all strategy. I mean, as I shared early on in my conversations with management, I've talked about, my work-life balance. I've talked about the fact that I think I can execute and even exceed in areas, but I'm going to do it from home. It doesn't mean that I won't come to the office. Of course I have and will. I absolutely travel and never miss a critical meeting if it's, within my power to be there. But my particular balance, that's been an aspect of it. I think a lot of those conversations are happening today. I think we're looking at new models, hybrid models with office time and work from home. But it's also about more than that. It's really understanding where someone's personal, professional development pathway lies, what opportunities are needed to help them proceed, and building towards that. So that's obviously going to involve some cross-functional exchange. You have to work closely with HR and other areas within your organization. But one thing that this pandemic has shown us is that it is possible to be productive and that we can still connect over Zoom and other modalities. And we have the ability to perform despite all of these challenges. I also think there's a lot of necessary conversations to be had around someone's, what they require, whether that's it is some additional time off or team building or reinforcement that helps them address the inevitable burnout, because we all need to take a break sometimes. Recharge, reset. There's a lot of clarity of thinking that occurs when that happens. So I think as a leader, we need to be willing to dive deep in some of these more difficult conversations so that we can really continue to show up for each other.
It's, again, Michelle, I agree with everything that you said. My hope, and I hope it's, founded in a reasonable assumption, is that mass exodus is going to be a mass return at some point. And I think Michelle mentioned it. Whether it's here or when I was at Medtronic, we tried very hard to be flexible and understand it is okay to come in and say, I got to talk to you about where I'm at, what I'm facing, and what I think I need to be able to continue to do my job effectively. And sometimes what I need is, look, I need 4 months off. I need to take some time. My parents have been sick. I dealt with all kinds of scenarios, from I have a family member who's really debilitated after COVID, or I've tried doing both of these and I just cannot feel like I'm doing the right thing to homeschool my kids and try to keep being on meetings. So I think we have to be more flexible than we've been before. And I don't think we know yet what this is actually going to do to how work gets done. I think that's yet to be seen. We all know it will change it forever. I don't think I understand really how much yet. I do think we need to give the space that people need. And, my first point of that conversation has been, when you get ready and you're ready to come back, this door is open, my phone number, and don't believe that you have to start over, right? You've earned the right to step away and step back in. And I think that conversation and the concept of sabbatical, right? It's a sabbatical. This is not new. People do it in medicine, right? It's been done. It's not a brand new concept. But I do think we need to make it more available. I don't think we're through the childcare challenges that we have seen. And this is a great opportunity in my mind to revisit how we supplement and support parents within our business, because you want to have parents working for you. That perspective is extraordinarily important. So I don't have a silver bullet for it. My hope is I know there's been a great resignation. I hope there's going to be a great return when it's, when people feel like they can manage all the demands that are out there. But I do think it's going to challenge us on creativity for how stuff gets done. And I think we're going to find more people who say, I don't want to come back to a 40, 50, 60-hour work week, and I need a part-time arrangement. And I think we need to start thinking about how do we make people optimally effective in those things. And that can be a high impact role, right? So maybe it'll allow us to revisit what work is in aggregate. It's going to move us forward.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to, again, what you both have said about raising your hand, not just I'm leaving. Why are you going? Why? What is the cause of you needing to take a step back? And let's talk about what that actually looks like. And steps back can be very different things. It doesn't, like you said, doesn't mean to step back in your career. It just means I need to take a step back from this thing right now to focus on something else. But I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to say something because I think that I'm valuable enough. I'm worth it. I absolutely need to respect my time enough to say, I need a break. This is why, and this is what we're going to do.
Well, I'd be remiss as a nurse on this call to not acknowledge what's happening in the medical field. So let's step out of MedTech for a second and think about the other side of the house that we exist to support, and the phenomenon that we see and the demands on not just nurses, but caregivers in the medical environment have been extraordinary. And it is something that I think every one of us as MedTech leaders need to have our eye on. The demands of the workforce, the attractiveness of being a medical provider and a healthcare provider has been impacted. pretty dramatically in the last year. And so I think sitting in a business leader seat, we need to have just as much an eye on the outside to understand what this has done to that workforce. And I think it leaves an opportunity on the table when we think about how we define innovation. And innovation has often been, in primarily patient focused. I think there's going to be an entire opportunity to think about workforce focused innovation where you really benefit healthcare in aggregate by addressing the target audience as the nurse and the physician and the caregiver.
I fully agree. And it's so significant that it should be part of all of our decisions in our new product development, in our strategic, objectives, because just because we've made something accessible to the patient at this point in time with this dynamic health state of healthcare does not mean we've made it fully accessible to the healthcare professionals that need to be proficient in utilizing that procedure. So that's another, and we're fully considering that in our needs assessment process as it relates to education and services. Healthcare is forever changed, and how we're going to approach that is critical. So great call out.
Relevance of innovation is going to drive a lot, right? There's incrementalism in innovation, I think just doesn't really have a chance today because you can't rise to the level of relevance within the healthcare system that's in crisis unless the magnitude of innovation is really, really meaningful.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point, both of you. I think that's a really great call out. Additionally, I think we found the value of people in this pandemic, right? Not just technology, not just automation, the value of people doing jobs that only they can do. Hopefully that this helped us all to realize the value in one another and in expertise and in knowledge and in learning new things and understanding that people are not just going to be replaced. You can't just, it's not a conveyor belt. It's not a factory line. When you need more clinicians, you need more clinicians. There's just a fact. There's a need. When you need more manufacturing expertise, because a lot of our medtech companies right now are having a hard time hiring. You need manufacturing expertise. You can't just put another robot on it. You need a person who knows what they're doing and is precise. So it's hopefully given us that value for one another and the skills that each individual has. So I know we're running quickly through our time, which we always do. We never have enough time, and we do have a bunch of questions coming in. So I want to make sure we keep time for that at the end. But Michelle, I did want to ask you, because you and I talked about this. You don't see a lot of chief medical officers who aren't physicians in medtech companies. I was wondering if you'd maybe give us a little bit of your pathway to that, because it's not something you see every day.
That's true. And it's something that I obviously fully considered in taking on this level of responsibility. But back to some of my earlier comments, what I realized is it's less about one particular degree or preparation and really more about the skills you develop along the way. And when I was at Beth Israel, I did a residency program, and I was thinking back around the fact that I spent a lot of times, contributing to rounds, multidisciplinary rounds. And my job, and it really, I feel like my development track started then, was to look across all of the teams and put together a cohesive team that was going to execute on that patient's care pathway. I had to make sure I always had the right experts involved, and that a lot of our decision making, of course, it considered the context, the organization in which we work, the environment, the potential complications or roadblocks around the way, but it was really about how we were going to advance the patient care pathway. I have taken that process and applied it every step of my journey in Medtech. And my current remit, I'm responsible for medical affairs, clinical operations, reimbursement and market access globally. And it's really managing cross-functional, multidisciplinary teams of experts. And it's my leadership and my management experience that qualifies me for the job that I have today. I have an incredible team of medical directors, physicians that I partner with day in and day out, and I couldn't do this job without them. But the same holds true with the nurses, paramedics, scientists, PhD research experts across, and reimbursement experts across the other areas that for which I have functional responsibility. Like I said earlier, I love to learn, and I've sought out mentors throughout this entire 15 plus year track, and I'm going to continue to seek out those opportunities where they're available to me. So you're right, it is not traditional yet, but it feels like it's moving in a direction where it'll be more commonly seen. And I think that's also true in some of our medical societies.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so I'm going to give our two speakers, Stacey and Michelle, a 2-minute kind of break while we talk about something else. If you all want to take a look at that Q&A at the bottom, we did have a lot of questions come in. You could take a quick look and see, prep yourself for some Q&A answers. But in the meantime, I would like to turn this over really quickly to Melinda from Medidata, who I asked to come and give a real quick update on a conference that they are running very soon. So Melinda, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Michelle and Stacey. I thought that was just phenomenal. I was really inspired by the insights and hearing your journeys. And speaking about family, I'm going to apologize in advance. My 2-year-old is home with me unexpectedly today. So if anybody hears him, I apologize. I'm going to just put up a little screen here if I can. Let me see if it'll work. Can you see that?
Yep, looks good.
Great. So Medidata is hosting a global conference that we call Next. And in the interest of expanding everybody's network and giving people the opportunity to collaborate with additional strong leaders across medtech and biotech and pharma, and certainly a lot of strong women leaders, I wanted to personally invite you to register. If you remember one thing, you can register at medidata.com. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing this year. So our focus is very heavily around kind of the evolving space for clinical and patient data. So thinking about the power of analytics and data across the life cycle of medtech and post-market. So really thinking about how that applies to EU MDR specifically for the medtech industry. Another area we're really focused on is decentralized clinical trials. Obviously, the last year has been really impactful in the way we engage with patients. So how do we meet patients at their home or away from the hospital, away from the clinic, and make it a little more patient-centric in the way we engage in clinical trials? We have a couple of really incredible speakers. I mean, a number of incredible speakers. You can check out the agenda on our website. Again, it's medidata.com. We have Dr. Scott Gottlieb, from former FDA commissioner, speaking. We have Dr. Lisa Sanders. If you watch the show Diagnosis, you might know her. She's also a professor at the Yale School of Medicine. She's doing a fireside chat with us. And we have just a great platform for collaboration. So in addition to all the great content, a way for you to connect with and network with a bunch of different people that are in attendance in the event, which include a lot of medtech folks. Boston Scientific is giving a great talk as well. And then you have access to all the material after the event. So if you can only even attend one of our sessions throughout the 3 days, I encourage you to register, because then you can reference the other sessions afterwards. There's a library of material available to you. So that's it. So I want to personally invite you. I hope we see you there, and I hope we get the chance to connect with you and do a little bit of networking.
Thank you so much, Melinda. That was great. I know I'm excited for the conference. So thank you for sharing that with us. And then, okay, so medidata.com, great. Teresa just puts the link into the chat. I was going to ask about that, but that is perfect. And if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to us at MassMEDIC too. So thanks, Melinda.
Thanks.
Oh, and you never have to apologize for children. We all understand.
He didn't yell, so we're in good shape.
Right. But you know what? I think we're all past the point of apologizing. There's no apologizing at this point. We just accept it. Okay, great. So I think it's good time then to jump into some Q&A with Stacey and Michelle. So you've had a chance to kind of take a look at the questions that have come in on the bottom. So I might let you guys go ahead and jump into this without me taking any time to read the questions out, if you want to give a little synopsis of the questions for the audience and anything you might want to chat about.
These are all great. There's a couple of these that become relational. And I think whether it's relationship, look, you're being authentic, you're being you, and you're bringing you to work. You either have a challenging relationship with a boss who, you and your boss don't have the right dialogue going on about that, or you have a peer challenge or relationship. One of the things that I have tried to hold myself to in my career is, look, I shouldn't say anything about someone unless I said it to someone. So if I'm expressing frustration and I, my husband is probably my exception to this rule, that I can come home and be frustrated. I have found over time that when you are able to take something that feels like it's unproductive or problematic or distracting and pull it to the surface in a way that so many times I either felt like somebody wasn't really helping me or may have had a secondary agenda, I find out that they actually just have a different perspective on the world. And I have a recent relationship with a peer that I can say the same thing. We see the world differently. We should. We sit in different chairs. But I have found, I try to go back and think of any time where I feel like I've had a situation like that. And I've put time on somebody's calendar or said, hey, can we grab a coffee? And said, look, I'm feeling this. Not sure if I'm picking up on this the right way. It's concerning for me, and I really would like to understand. Whether it's your boss who's saying, hey, don't think your authentic self is helping. Can I unpack that with you a little bit more? Can you help me understand, is there something that I'm doing that you feel like is impairing productivity at the office? Are you coaching me stylistically because you think that something I'm doing from a behavior standpoint is going to keep me from being successful? But can I take a little time with you and unpack that? I find that people get really concerned about having the next level conversation, and the credibility that comes from that, the perspective that you get. I've been able to take, I would say, like, there's an 80% burden reduction on that stress when I find a way to just get that on the table. And I don't think I've ever had somebody just say, no, I'm not going to talk to you about that. No, I don't care to give you any further understanding of that. So I think communication is the failing. I say we lose more value in business, I think, from communication than anything. I would encourage you, whether it's a peer relationship that you're feeling is not healthy, whether it's a relationship with your boss, you got to work through that. And you got to really think about how you do it in not an aggressive way and not an accusatory way, but saying, look, I feel it, it's concerning to me, or I heard you, I've spent some time with that, and that really concerns me. Can we spend a little time unpacking that? Because it's really important to me that I contribute here. It's really important to me that you and I are peers and I respect you. But I feel like we're competing with one another rather than supporting one another. That's the best advice that I have. And it works pretty reliably for me. What do you have to lose? If you do it in a professional way, these are the kinds of things that I think fester below and drive people to leave based on false assumptions, I think, a good percentage of the time.
Yeah,
Michelle,
if I could pop in just for a second, I think it's too about perspective, right? So I recently had a similar situation where I looked at it, and my first mental thought was, well, what am I going to do if this happens? And I had to take a step back and say, you know what can I do to make sure it doesn't get to that level? That's it's just, and there's no credit to me. It's just taking a step back and saying, you know what, I'm not going to let it get there. How can I address it before it gets to that level? So spot on. I completely agree with what you're saying. Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Rachel, I'm so glad you jumped in too, because it's great we all live this. This is just part of going to work. And I loved the way you described that, Stacey. I fully support everything you said. Conflict's an opportunity in its own right. And how we address it is critical for the individuals, critical for the group. I mean, There's been so many great discussions around emotional intelligence of groups. It is a necessary skill. That we need to apply every day to our interactions. So I'm trying to think what to say that would not be just repetitive on what you just said, but really, I think having those conversations, treating them like an opportunity, and I agree, my experience has been that people are willing to participate in the discussion, and maybe not all at one time. It might be something where you look for small wins as you cultivate a better relationship over time. And sometimes you agree to disagree or have a different perspective. But if you can recognize that those varying perspectives are actually making us all stronger and better at what we do, then I think people will want to continue to work with you.
Yeah. And it says, I care enough to understand. And by the way, if it's your boss, it says, hey, I'm coachable.
Yes.
I will tell you, it's one of the skills that I feel like, man, if I could go back and tap my 25-year-old self earlier on, learning how to seek input and seek feedback before something gets to that position. How am I doing? It's easy to go to your boss and say, hey, what'd you think? Was that good? Was that good? Right? Like you feel like that was, we all have a tendency to seek validation. I had a great boss, Brett Wall, who I finally said, please don't tell me what I did good. I need to hear the other. And, I said, I need to hear it in the moment. Right. And when he really got comfortable with that with me to say, hey, listen, I know you're about to ask me about the missed opportunity in there. And if you can phrase it in that way, right? Hey, did you see a missed opportunity for me in there? Hey, if I could have done one thing differently in that presentation or in that meeting that I felt like didn't go well, what do you think that could have been? First, you're going to build and flex your muscle and you're going to get better. It also says, I want feedback. I respect your opinion. It becomes part of the character of who you are as a leader. And I think, man, if I had learned this skill earlier, it could have unlocked so many things for me to get to that kind of seeking the other part of feedback from people before you get to conflict, or before you get to that discussion with your boss.
Agreed. And listening to you reminded me, and I want to be sure to say this, as a leader, as a manager, you need to invite people to have those conversations with you, right? Yeah. It's bi-directional. It's how you engage with your manager, but also if you know there's a conflict on your team, you need to have a lot of conversations and encourage exactly that. Encourage that exchange. Ask people to go into the conversation, really wanting to maintain or build upon a relationship that feels difficult. And I mean, there's a reality to all this. Not all relationships are going to be optimally what you would like them to be, but that's not really what it's about. It's how can we be effective together, and
bringing it above the table.
Yes. Most
people feel like they have to behave differently when the issue's above the table than below the table. And so I think it's just a way to modify expectations across the board, right? This is not a subversive type of thing. I had a concern. I felt like something didn't go well. I've laid that on the table as a point of discussion, opportunity, work for us. It's a powerful, powerful thing. And I think, there was another question in here that was really thinking about, how do I want to look to lead, right? Mm-hmm. And how do you advance yourself? And that healthy conflict in managing what we call the critical conflict. I always told my leadership team, if we don't have that, we're not working hard enough and we're not thinking hard enough. Or worse than that, we don't even have all the right people at the table. Because if we all see everything the same way, we're probably in a lot of trouble right now. And so I think there's ways that you can set that. Sometimes I would even go as far as forcing a debate on the team. Like saying, no, somebody has to take counterpoint here. There's no natural debate or healthy conflict happening here. We're going to set up a debate and discussion just to make sure we're thinking through that. And I do think there are cultural aspects that you can do to try to help make that more comfortable. Where it's okay to disagree. It's okay to say, I think I see this differently. But I think that all kind of leads into those leadership skills. There was someone else who said here, been in the industry, I think for 3 years, what advice do you have? And I think you said it so well, Michelle, about I sit in my role, my title wasn't chief medical officer, but I headed medical affairs and I had physicians who worked for me in that process. The other thing I would take is those same skills allowed me to move to lead the business, to lead commercial. It really is your articulation of, look, the skills that put me in the chair that I am today are a function of leadership development, managing conflicts, knowing how to get the right people at the table. To this nurse who's out there in 3 years in industry, those skills that you had at the bedside, cross coordination, being able to pick up the phone and communicate critical information, being perceptive to changes, all those things are so transferable. I would just say, be very careful. I spent too long thinking that I had one track in industry. There was kind of one thing I could do. Or I was a nurse who didn't have an MBA. They were never going to let me, take a business on. Nobody had to discount me. I could always get there first. Just really be very broad in understanding that it's those types of skills, and you have a lot of them in the work that you've done. They allow you to do a lot of things. Don't hold within a box. Just make sure you're doing what you want and what you love.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's so much opportunity in this field, and pursuing those opportunities is critical to your advancement. And don't be afraid of what you don't know. As you said, go after it, figure it out, like find the right people to learn from, and then share your experience, because there's a very good chance you're going to help them be better at what they do too. So,
well, doing something you don't know builds a different skill set.
Yes.
Like, I talk with people about getting out of their comfort zone. Me taking on that sales role in Europe at the time we were being acquired by another company, there was many days I was thinking, what on earth were you thinking? You have no idea what you're doing here. It built more muscle for me, I think, in that time, probably than I had ever built. And it was because I just had to rely on a totally different set of skills, right? You have to ask more questions. You really have to analyze your team and understand who knows what they're doing, because you don't. And you can look at that and say, that's not how leadership is supposed to work. At some point in time, everybody takes on something they've never done before. It's the way it is. And it's the capability and the aptitude to do it and flex and ask questions and find the right people that ultimately, I think, really ends up being the advancement skill at the top end of the ladder. And so, if you're comfortable in what you're doing, that's probably a problem for your own development.
Also a good humility check.
Amen. There was no fake it till you make it there. They all knew I hadn't done this before. They all knew I was an American. So.
Okay, on that note, I'm afraid we are up on time, and I want to make sure I'm cognizant of your schedules, but let me just say thank you both so much for joining us for this. And it was just an excellent conversation, a ton of takeaways. I'm so glad we recorded this, because otherwise I would have been frantically scribbling them down, but now we all have a recording of it for future use. But thank you both so very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. And nice to meet you, Stacey. It sounds like we're neighbors.
And everyone else, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us. And I can't wait to see you again at another program. So have a great one. Bye-bye.